Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases. Hello, everyone. Glad you're able to join us tonight. We got a show that means a lot to this channel, and absolutely to a cold case that we've been discussing over the last several months, the search for Amber Cromb. We have a special guest tonight, one of our team members that contacted me, wished to volunteer equipment and their time in their specific field, bringing in some technology that I absolutely am so appreciative for them offering, because it is something that I had looked at ground penetrating radar, but I did not know about this. And after being contacted by this person, absolutely embraced it. And I am so glad I did. And you'll be able to hear some of that tonight. Just as always, have respect for families, the mods, and each other, and chat. And after we have a short presentation and Carolyn introduces herself, then we'll be getting into some questions. So just sure.
I'm butting in. Welcome back.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
All right. I've got 3 blue lights.
Okay.
Here we go. Sarah, IAOS, is a new member. Thank you so much. Single mom of 4, member for 2 months. And Miranda Lee, a member for 2 months.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Y'all so very much. We appreciate it.
Yes. And while we were on the road, we weren't able to create as much content or any content because we worked far longer hours than I ever imagined. But I'm glad everybody's here tonight, and I'm looking forward to this. But with that being said, let me introduce Carolyn. Hello, Carolyn.
Hello.
How are you doing tonight?
I am about recovered from going under that house, and I'm getting all of my data images ready for you guys, so it's good to get that going.
Well, you're absolutely fearless, and you're a hard worker, both you and your sister, and we're so appreciative of you from the time you contacted us. If you would, just give introduce yourself, your background, and a little bit about what equipment and the technology you brought to this case.
Yeah. So I have my Bachelor's of Science from UW-Madison, and I did physics and astro, and I actually started an X-ray astrophysics lab, but I wanted to go outside more, so I did geophysics, and I ended up working in the Halliburton Visualization Center, and I was working on tsunamis and earthquakes off of Japan when the Tohoku earthquake happened. That was not my exact subduction zones, but my lab ended up working on the fast response after that. And but I wanted to stay around Wisconsin, so there's not a lot of earthquakes there. And so I did. I got into the near surface geophysics stuff because it's really like hydrology heavy, and there were some issues with quarries and clay and just bedrock depths and stuff that they needed somebody to image. And so the first thing I ever worked with at the Wisconsin Geological Survey was the ERI machine that they had just gotten. And so I took that out to image clay. And then I did some aquifers for artesian wells. So That's just like a big spring that comes out of the ground. And that was pretty cool to see where that comes from, because it's just big gravel pits under the ground. And I did that. I did a lot of water quality stuff with bedrock. And yeah, so that was my background. And then I moved around a little bit because I have a great husband who got some jobs. And yeah, so.
Okay. So you formed this channel. Give the name of your channel and your please.
Unearthed Secrets, because
Great name. Great name.
try to
And
do
and what's your plans for that?
I want to take my sister around because she's funny and she's a good time. And there's just a lot of things that we're interested in looking at. And I've already gotten to go to Florence, Mississippi, and my sister's come along with me on that too. And I did a yard at a house that has paranormal activity there. And it was just fun. It's just fun to explore different landscapes. And so I want to get out, I want to do that, and I want to solve some mysteries, or at least look at some of them. That's, Wisconsin and Illinois, kind of flat. It's kind of the same. Got to get out.
This equipment that you currently use, this ERI, tell us a little bit about it and how you use it in the historic cemeteries, and how you're able to determine grave sites, and how that can help cold cases in locating clandestine graves.
Yeah, so the electrical resistivity imaging equipment, it gives you kind of the same look as a sonar or a ground penetrating radar image, where you look into the ground like a slice. But instead of sending in, like, radio waves are sent in when you do ground penetrating radar, and sound waves are sent in when you do like different types of sonar or something like that. I send in electrical current from a machine that I have into the ground. And how I send it into the ground along a line, I hammer electrodes into the ground, or I get somebody else to hammer them into the ground for me. And I connect them to the box, and I can have as many as 24 in a row. And then the current will be sent in different ways along that line. And my box collects all the change from the current going in to what it sees coming out of the ground, because there'll be a change. And then my equipment tells me, well, if the ground changed the current in this way, then the ground must have a resistivity structure that looks like this, and that comes out on my computer screen.
And that changes when a body is introduced into the soil.
Yeah, if there's a difference in the ground in like the character of the materials, or if there's a void, or if there's like water content that changes, anything like that, that'll be a change in how the current goes through the ground. And so we kind of already have an idea of what a clay would look like and what a sandstone looks like, and everything's got its like ranges that you already know what you're expecting. And like voids are going to be super resistive because like current can't go through air like that, and water is super conductive. And so you kind of already know what to like the ranges that you expect if you know what you're kind of expecting to see in the ground. And so it gets a little trickier when you're looking at bodies or burials in historic cemeteries. I'm not really looking for a conductive area where a body is decomposing anymore, because that can be over and I won't see a signature from that definitely after a couple decades. But it all really depends on the type of ground that the person's been buried in. But I will see the fill on top of that person or the disturbed ground. Either there'll be horizontal layers in the ground, and then when you dig into those horizontal layers, then you've just broken it. And I'll see in my data where like it's a nice clear line of clay or something, and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore, and it's like, well, then something like disturbed that clay layer for some reason. And if it's a cemetery, it's like, well, good chance that it's because somebody was buried there. You also have to kind of know where trees were and things like that. But It's also nice because like where there were trees, those will be highly resistive. You'll know that kind of thing. But yeah, and then so you look at the fill will be more resistive. And if they've really taken care of the cemetery, it'll be a real strong signature. If they haven't, you'll still see a difference right above where the person would be.
What do you see the future for this equipment and how it will impact cold cases?
Well, the future is bright for this. I had a lot of discussions, especially when I worked at the survey in Wisconsin, that this is really underused, and it's really only being like kind of introduced into the United States a little bit more and more. And so I think for especially the future of this and what I can do with the equipment that I have, because I have been able to kind of get to know what ranges to expect in the ground from different kinds of landscapes and all of that. It's the subtle differences that you'd have to look for, or like if you, for cold cases, if you're looking for in a yard and you don't know really what you're looking for, after a while you start to understand what the landscape looks like. And with my ERI, you can see the subtle differences that have happened even a long time ago.
And we also, along with your the ERI equipment, we use some probes, and which I found fascinating about the Texas soil of how when you introduce those probes. I think that longest one you had was what, 6 foot?
Yeah, and I thought I was buying a collapse, like an adjustable one, but it wasn't. So you just had to be tall to get it started.
Yes.
Which good thing that Chris was there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. With that being said, I've got a couple of slides I'm going to go through, and if you want to look at those right quick and try to explain some of that. But first, of course, this is Amber Cromb. She's a 2-year-old that in 1983 was reported abducted by her mother's boyfriend, who had taken Amber to the store on December 26th. And while he was in the store, he came out and found that, or he declared that she had been abducted from his vehicle, and which has started this 40-year mystery and pursuit of justice for Larry Crum, who is the biological father that I've spoken to on several occasions, and who also met us in Texas. And hopefully I'll get everything lined up for an interview again with Larry this Saturday. But if you wish to look up anything about Amber, or if you have any information about Amber, make sure law enforcement absolutely has that, and we would appreciate it. And then, now I just picked this up about the ERT, ERI, that's a geophysical technique for imaging subsurface structures by electrodes. And is that basically what this is?
Is this yes, this looks fine. We didn't use boreholes.
Okay.
It's yeah, so the electrical.
This is off of Wikipedia, so you'll have to excuse. Whatever I copied is not what is holding her. She will tell you what the standard is.
Yeah, so the electrical resistivity, it can be either tomography or imaging. It really all depends on what you want to call it. And yeah, it measures it will image the structures in the ground through the measurements of the resistivity character of the ground. So when you put the current into the ground and then you read it back out down the line, you'll see how resistive the ground was to that current or how conductive it was. And in that image right there, that blue is really conductive. It's a really wet ground, and you could even hear it when we stuck the probes into the ground and you pull them back out. You could hear like the sucking of the water. Like it, what I got in my data definitely was ground truth by just the probes going into the ground like that.
And the reason that we were at this particular property and in this certain area was due to the fact that the current property owners back in the 90s had found a child's bed sheet blanket with a certain characters on it that were indicative of a child's blanket, and some bones that were turned over to law enforcement and the FBI, which was a strange thing for their children who were playing in this area where there was a small ankle deep duck pond. And so, of course, having something that was possibly related to this uh, crime, this abduction, we wanted to look in this area. And this technology that Carolyn brought to us allowed us to do certain things about it. In this one image, is there certain things that you can point out that is of specific interest to you?
Yeah. So in the blue area, especially where I've used the lines to show where the duck pond was in the yard. So we put the line. It's 23 meters long. So we went kind of towards the house, and then we came down away from the house, and that's where this line was taken from, and that's 23 meters. And so like kind of multiply that by 3.2 to get feet. And so the thing that was interesting when the image came out was that duck pond. You would think because it's a depression in the yard, it would collect water better and it would just probably be wetter there. But it actually wasn't. And at first I was wondering, well, because it looks like it's slightly more resistive, I first went in and looked at the actual values that were creating this image, and it is higher resistivity. It's not just an artifact of the plotting software. That actually is real higher resistivity right there at the duck pond. And so then you have to go in and consider, well, if it's been dug into a little bit, has the clay been manipulated in a way that it's like, I don't know, easier for the ground to evaporate right there, and that's why it's not as wet as the surrounding ground? And that doesn't really seem to make sense because we have the higher resistivity near the surface. That does look like it's been disturbed, but it's been dug into because it's the duck pond and the kids played there. But in depth, where the kids weren't digging, there shouldn't be a difference in the ground right there. There's a reason why in depth, further down than where the kids were digging, there's a higher resistivity than the wetter soil that's in the yard. And so that is interesting.
Okay. Now you ran a total of 3 lines, which after we hammered, we made sure that we didn't touch while you was running because they would electrocute us, or she warned us to stay away from the probes. But of all the lines you looked at, how many areas was of special interest?
So I made sure to run across this duck pond in all of them, and they all came out like that, which is great because I would have panicked had they not all come out to have this high resistivity right at the duck pond. And then another area that I thought was interesting was we did a third line, and that one I also thought was important to have a closer look at it. That one's just south of the duck pond, and that has not only a different signature in depth. I can't remember if it's higher in resistivity or lower, but the thing that really stood out to me in that particular line that I still have to get the final image for is that the clay at near the surface, that entire surface area that should just look like horizontal and all uniform. It's not part of the duck pond. It shouldn't have been disturbed. We were even told by the homeowners where they had disturbed the ground. Nothing should have happened there, but this, what I would expect to be a horizontal area, was definitely disturbed. Somebody had dug in there, and then in depth, there is something going on with the resistivity difference. So line 3 also has something very unique that should take a closer look.
And we're, I think the ground penetrating radar or sonar that we're going at some point, we had a some more information that came to us and changed our interest a little bit, shifted it a little bit, which we'll be discussing later as soon as Chris finishes his editing. And I think his first show is tomorrow night. And so we'll get the first 3 days. But we identified a lot of different things that absolutely in the investigative world from law enforcement that says, yes, we need to pursue further. And we're going to introduce ground penetrating radar here to the back also, because you said it does some complements what you did.
Yeah, ground penetrating radar complements ERI really well because they both look at the disturbances and differences in the ground, and they both do lines like what you're seeing on the screen with line 1. It's a 2D image. The thing is, sometimes it is a good partner with ERI ground penetrating radar. It doesn't work really well in wet ground. Ground penetrating radar is a radio wave. It will attenuate very quickly in conductive material. And so I'd be a little worried putting GPR back here, except for the fact that we are looking really shallow. And also we're looking for the disturbances in that horizontal layer near the surface before it gets to the really conductive material. And also at the duck pond, it's going to be higher in resistivity at that area. So it would be able to image a little bit better there, which would, I mean, in itself, being able to image better there because it's higher in resistivity would ground truth my data. I have no worries about them going over my lines and telling me the exact same thing that I'm seeing on mine that they're seeing on theirs.
Now, after day 3, we transitioned to the crawl space. We was going to run ERI in the crawl space. And of course, that got sidetracked upon what did we found some disturbed earth and kind of basically describe that a little bit and the conditions of what you had to work in during in that crawl space.
First, I don't want to forget to give a shout out to the homeowners for turning off the electricity in the backyard too. I just wanted to remember to say that was awesome because having electricity going when I'm trying to put electricity into the ground can really mess up your line. And so that was awesome. But yeah, so Larry was just great. You couldn't keep up with him. Even in the crawl space, you couldn't keep up with Larry. And we were setting up to start our line in we were coming in from one corner of the house and we had to make it all the way to the opposite corner of that side of the house. And we didn't quite make it there before we saw a lot of things under the house that we were concerned about. And so we checked those out instead, and that ended up taking up a lot of time.
Yes, and it was absolutely fascinating. Like I said, we found things are indicative that absolutely have to be pursued because all the information leads to that there is a great possibility of some criminal activity in that crawl space at some point because it can't be explained. Can you explain any of the things without naming all of them, but can you explain any of those things that would be there naturally?
No.
And that's
I can say that when you look at the character of the ground, I was going in there expecting it to be pretty hard ground. Like I was walking in there thinking that Larry was going to do a lot of hammering for me because that was going to be hard to get through. And I was already ready to pour water on the electrodes because you can pour water onto the electrodes that I stick into the ground to send the current. And that'll actually, it's called coupling it to the ground. So it'll make just a better contact with the electrode to the ground. And so you can pour water on it. I also had to do that. And yeah, the ground was really hard in a lot of places. And then there were some places where the character of the ground changed quite dramatically. And there was no reason for the ground in at least 3 different situations under there. The the ground surface was different than it really should have been for just a crawl space with no leaking pipes. No, it was a really, it wasn't as, I mean, there were spiders and things and some holes that looked like maybe some snakes lived there, and I put my plastic bag over that for a little bit. But like otherwise, there's not a lot of activity of animals and things down there. There shouldn't have been a huge difference in the ground, especially in in 3 places, that one place in particular.
Yeah. As far as the working condition, is this probably the worst conditions that you've worked in, or
Yeah.
if not, that's scary.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple that stand out. Just going through really heavy brush or thorns, or like just trying to get around different objects that have been just miserable, or going up the side of a quarry with my equipment on my back. There's been some like really challenging things, or like 105 degrees in the middle of a fen where there's only one bush to sit under and you can't walk back to the car. I mean, there's been some pretty bleeping awful projects I've been on, but this one, like, and besides that, like, you want to be able to see the crawl space even better than you are when you're in there. Like, you can only see so far with like the light situation and just how you're positioned, and you know that you want to find stuff, like especially when like you can't let Larry down,
Yes,
like, and you
absolutely.
can't let Amber down, and it's just that was miserable because it was like you just couldn't get everywhere you wanted to go because you were like crawling on your stomach.
Yeah. We could have easily spent 2 more weeks out there, and
Yeah.
probably at some point that will be necessary, because there's, we only really started, and on all the processes that could be done and will be done, but it was absolutely amazing. All in all, how did you feel that the search for Amber? How do you think it went?
I think I mean, the thing about geophysics is that you never go into a project expecting success, and you never leave the project saying there was success. There's a non-unique issue with geophysics in general, with all types of geophysics. You can say that what you like with my ERI aspect of it, you can say when you're looking in the ground that this has the character of a certain object, but it also has the character of like 1 or 2 other things that could be possible. And so you say like, well, we're looking for like if I'm looking for a grave in a cemetery, like this has the character of a grave in a cemetery, or it also has the character of like a buried something else or whatever might be happening in that yard. And so the non-unique, like you have to really know the landscape you're looking at, which I'm comfortable with this yard. There's been some yards that it's just been miserable with boulders and glacial material and all that just make it so hard to give a definitive answer. And so I'm really confident in the yard work that we did, and I'm very hopeful with how under the house went.
Yes. Now you have some images that I hope you share of absolutely the work conditions of you and Larry under there.
I shared those with you already.
Okay, I just hadn't looked at them all yet, but I was talking about on your channel also.
Oh,
that you
yeah, I got that up today.
Yes, and I appreciate that. We got your link up there and got it out there. Yes, because just the visualization of it is one thing, but to hear you describe the of what was going on under there, and because y'all went through some hazards. Larry got hit with electricity twice under there, and so we didn't have, or they didn't have all the power off, but I absolutely appreciate you doing everything you did. You was fearless and you worked hard, and I absolutely impressed me.
I was definitely not fearless. There was fear. But especially at one point when Larry was calling out what the bugs he was seeing in front of him before I had to crawl through it, and he even paused for a minute because we both didn't want to go forward, and we just made some like noises like ugh, and I don't want to be here, and then we just paused and then we just went forward. He even asked me, "Are you ready?" And I said, "No, let's go."
Absolutely. But anyway, anything before we get into the questions that we need to cover or needs to be brought up before we start seeing what we have?
No, I just want to make it clear, like the non-unique thing with the ERI, you can get definitive answers if you know what you're looking for on the landscape. But as a geophysicist who doesn't want to like have their work come back at them or get their company sued or something, you always go the interpreted item that. But I'm confident. I liked how the ground turned out for these lines.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So we'll see if we got a few questions here.
You do now. You're not going to show any photos of being in the crawl space or no?
No, well, that's going to be on the next.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay.
Yeah, we've got a lot of things that we're going to be looking at as we progress forward. Chris has a show that's going to be coming out. They'll have a lot of the work conditions that Chris, he went in. He didn't make it. He's a pretty big fella, and he didn't make it to the full extent of Carolyn and Larry. There's nowhere Larry. I think Larry he went all the way to the other end of the house, and I don't even see how that's possible.
Yeah, he set up the measuring tape all the way in that back corner before we had to stop. Okay. And so he wasn't the one that went and got it though, but I know how it came back to me because it's shredded now.
Yeah. We did have some loss of equipment that we will have to be replacing, guys, and I appreciate y'all's support because we have to replace some equipment. But that happens on all. I don't know if I've ever been anywhere or worked a crime scene that something didn't get destroyed. But anyway, we are ready.
All right. First one is Miranda, and she's the one with the 2 months. And she says, I skipped through her comments, but I didn't. I actually saved it. She said that I love True Crime Web and Mr. Steve.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. Appreciate your support.
All right. And Leah, is the ground softer at a burial site, even after long periods of time?
The ground is actually, when I look at it in my data, the ground will be, it might feel like it's softer to you if you're walking over a grave because you sink down, but it's actually more compact over time. And so everything that was filled into over a burial will slowly compact itself. And then if it's a well-kept burial, they'll keep putting fill in as the ground starts to settle. So the ground is actually slightly harder over a burial, unless like the fill was brought in from somewhere else, which usually wouldn't happen.
All right.
Hold on 1 second. I'm trying to play catch up here.
Oh yeah, we always play catch up. As you'll find out as your channel grows and you get your videos out there, and I'm looking forward to that. You have a great introductory video, and you said you created that yourself.
I did. I liked the music. So there is an area where I talk about digging things up, and I'm showing a cemetery. I just want everybody to know I did not dig up an old cemetery. I just threw some images in when I was talking.
Excellent. Okay. All right. What's Chris got going on?
He's editing as fast as he can for the show tomorrow.
Excellent. And I was, like I said, the team that came together, and it was all volunteers from the get-go, and absolutely amazing. And of course, there will be a time that when we're discussing our interviews with law enforcement that occurred on about day 4, I believe, but of how our team was assembled, and law enforcement was amazed by the people that stepped forward and came together, and I'm absolutely appreciative of that, and it's a great story, and I look forward to telling that part.
I mean, they were amazed after they were suspicious.
They were. I mean, absolutely kind of humorous in certain ways.
Okay. And single mama 4, is this type equipment really good for cold cases?
Yeah, the ERI is good for the ground disturbances, and it's good, especially if somebody was put into something like if it's material and it's wet and the material gets really wet, that can show up really good. Or if they're put into like a metal something, that'll show up really clear, especially if it's voidy between the person and what they've been put in. Then it'll show up as resistive. It'll show up really clear against the background. So it's really good in the case of disturbed ground, or like what the conditions are that anybody would have been put into the ground in. But also it's also really good for other things that might be important to cold cases, like old foundations can be seen really good, and even old roads. I imaged a old hearse path in a cemetery in Deerfield, Illinois. You can see where the horse-drawn hearses used to go, and it looks like just an area where there's not anybody buried right now, but that's actually because it's an old path. And that came out really clear. So you can see things like that. But there's other things like there's something called terrain conductivity. And I keep bringing this up to Steve because this is also very good equipment. And it works on the same idea as the electrical resistivity. Resistivity and conductivity are actually just the opposite. You can just take like 1 over resistivity is just conductivity. It's like the most, it's like a really easy equation. And so terrain conductivity works the same way, but you can walk it. It looks like the like things that people hold that do tightrope walking. It looks like that. And that sends a current through a magnetic field into the ground. And that shows you also the conductivity of the ground when you're walking, but it will only give you 1 or 2 data points at each location that you're at. And it takes a little bit more understanding of how to use the equipment and what you're seeing. But that kind of equipment is used a lot in the FBI and other agencies because it can be walked, and you can see, you can get through some areas quicker, or some areas that other equipment might not be able to go, like piles of debris or something like that.
Excellent. All right.
Okay. And Molly at Carolyn, can you say what the difference is between what you do and ground penetrating radar? What most of us are probably familiar with, and is it better or just different?
Well, I own the an ERI right now, so I'm going to say that that's better. But I do want a ground penetrating radar, so I'm going to say that they're just different. But so with ground penetrating radar, that's a radio wave that goes into the ground. And if you've seen a lawnmower kind of looking thing, that is of a higher frequency. And so when that radio wave goes into the ground, it's gonna get you some pretty good detail near the surface, but it's gonna go dissipate pretty quickly once it gets into the ground, especially if there's water. Like I had an issue at a cemetery once where the water table was at about between 4 and 6 feet. And so you couldn't really tell what, like that GPR has reflectors in the data instead of just like an image with numbers. And so you have to read the reflectors in the image. But it was hard to tell the difference between like a grave reflector, like where a grave top was, and where the water table was, because they were both bright reflectors. And so that was very hard to manage. And there's other issues with ground penetrating radar. There's a hyperbola artifact that comes up a lot. If there's an object like a pipe or a boulder or something, as you pass over it, since the radio wave comes out spherically, you're gonna end up getting instead of just like the object, you get like a hyperbola that you have, and then it's called collapsing the hyperbola. And you can do that if you have an idea of the velocity of the ground. And so you have to do some corrections if you need to see things within like boulders or objects or pipes or whatever. And so that can be a little frustrating with ground penetrating radar because it has a lot more processing. And so when you see people trying to interpret ground penetrating radar in the field and not saving their data, not taking it back to look at, and they're not doing that processing, they're missing a lot of information, and that bugs the heck out of me.
Oh, I know it. You, when you first pulled up that screen, it was nothing but numbers. And I said, oh my goodness, I have no idea, because this screen here gives no justice to what all those numbers are when you're looking at those.
It's a lot of data points, yeah.
It is data points, absolutely. Okay.
But the one other thing that I always forget to mention about ground penetrating radar is, ground penetrating radar sends the radio wave spherically, so it goes up too. You're not just sending it into the ground. I do not send electricity shooting sky high. I just send it into the ground. But then you need to know, like, you need to correct for things like you need to know like the velocity for like what's like, you correct for if there's a tree above you, you're gonna see that reflector in your data, like it's in the ground, but it's the tree, so you have to correct for like the air to tree reflector and stuff. And there's a lot of corrections with ground penetrating radar, but it does image really well. So it's just different because I want one.
You want one? And we're going, whatever it takes whenever we go to these cases, we'll absolutely get.
But there's different, also there's different frequencies. Like I've worked with an 800, a 120, and a 500. And the 800 goes down really, really deep, but you don't see detail at the surface at all. You got to kind of know which frequency you need.
All right.
All right. Now I'm fixing to go through some donations and
okay, sure, absolutely,
that type thing.
All right.
I do not want to run out of time on this. All right, so we're going to start off Blue Light with Mike D.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your support.
We have Cynthia.
Thank you, Cynthia.
And hold on. Honey B.
Appreciate it, Honey B. Thank you for your super sticker.
And Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda. Super sticker.
Another super sticker. Then we have Brenda gifted a membership tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And Single Mama 4 gifted a membership tonight. Thank y'all so very much.
Thank you, because all those funds is going towards a measuring tape.
Yay! I don't want to get rid of my measuring tape. Can we just fix it?
Well, I mean, whichever way is best for you. If it's fixable, then of course that's what we'll do.
We should get a new one.
Okay. Yes.
All right. And from Miranda at True Crime Web and Carolyn, would charcoal and limestone from decades ago still be present in the ground, or would it be broken down, dissolved, gone?
Well, like lime or limestone, I mean, it would all start to deteriorate a little bit, but you're still going to see it. If you don't see the actual material anymore from something because of like erosion or whatever, you're still going to, there's still going to be the ground around anything that would be impacted by the chemical dissolution of what's happening. And so you'd still be able to at least do a chemical analysis of an area, but I guess it all depends on the conditions for how fast it would start to deteriorate.
But you normally just don't see charcoal and lime in laying close proximity to other anomalies.
I've never seen the what I saw under there before,
Absolutely.
but I would,
It piqued everybody's interest.
yeah.
We'll say that. Okay.
And DZ question, does Carolyn have an email address? I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and would love to volunteer whenever she's in the area. Professional hammerer.
In your on your YouTube channel, I don't know if you put an email into your where it says about or not. Did you or did you not?
I have not. That was because I forgot, but I will.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then you can contact me through that. But also, if you don't want to wait around for me, I do a lot of stuff in southeastern Wisconsin. But the Wisconsin Geological Survey, they have that ERI that I worked on. If you wanted to call up Dave Hart and bother him about it, he would talk to you.
All right. Okay.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Playing catch up again. All right. And already did her. And Miranda at True Crime Web at Carolyn. If you did find a bone of Amber's, how can you prove it at the lab that it's actually hers? Do you have Amber's DNA or something that belongs to her?
We are currently processing a lot of materials that we brought back with us. We won't know for, I don't know, maybe days or weeks. It's going to be at least weeks because there's still a lot of processing to do. And then they have to determine if it's human or not. But if we find a human bone or anything that says that any individual has been under that house at any point, then of course law enforcement will take it from there. And of course we have Larry's DNA, who's the father. So that link will be, if there's a DNA profile in anything, then of course, if we match it to Larry, then of course it's great. But even if you can't, if there's not enough of a DNA profile, but enough to indicate that it's human, then that's huge in and of itself.
And Miranda, did you ever find out what happened to those bones and the blanket from the 90s? What if that was Amber's remains? If the ground disturbance is there, how can you prove it was her?
We don't know currently, and then there's always the possibilities of going back and excavating that area also. But right now, we've still got to do all the processing of what we have and see where it leads. There's a lot of unanswered questions that what we collected may or may not be the answer. So we may or may not be going back. You agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, for if the ground disturbance is there, how can you prove it was her? There's, you'd have to do an exploration of that area, or I don't know what our ideas about cadaver dogs are right now.
Yeah.
Or that kind of thing isn't really something I would know. All I know is that if that, dig into the ground.
And that's what I said. There's a lot of processing to do, but right now we took what was having the highest probability of results, and that's where we're at currently. And we'll see where that goes. And then if that's negative, we'll go to the next step, because this case is worth pursuing. Larry's been pursuing it for 40 years, and we're going to pursue it until every avenue, until there's not an avenue to pursue.
I'll even go back under the house with Larry for him and Amber.
I understand.
I really hope I don't have to, but I would.
Okay.
All right. And another from Miranda. I'm really disappointed that Texas LE isn't running the test on the evidence that you found. Why won't they?
We'll be covering a lot of that, but some of it is that they collected a lot of different bones that were found under there, and everything that was on surface was determined non-human. And so they said if it was human, they would take over, but they didn't find anything human. They found non-human, and so that it was left up to us to pursue from this point forward.
You froze for a second, but I just wanted to say, like, they didn't go all the way to some of that evidence. I'm not sure if he said that, but it was because he was worried about what he'd be crawling under, but I don't think he was going to be able to get back there.
Yes. Sadly sometimes, but now they did show up and they did a thorough coverage of interviews and the first look at it. But if we find something, they'll go back. And so it's not, we're not at an end yet.
Yeah, and what they took, they were taking it very seriously. I had to poke my head inside to direct people where to collect things, and so it was. I was comfortable with what they did get out of there at the time.
Oh yeah, there were some good descriptors they used at the time, but had our hopes up.
Yep.
All right. And Molly, what was the height of the crawl space? Looked like 18 inches max. Shudder.
Oh wow! I never measured. I mean, I couldn't easily turn when I was on my stomach at many points in there, and there were parts where like you kind of had to wiggle yourself under things. Otherwise, I did go back a little over 44 feet under that house though, because I saw a picture of my measuring tape today.
All right, hold on 1 second. I'm grabbing a link for Anna. Okay. And we did hers. All right. And this here is from Dave. Hey, Dave. Is there a difference in the temp under the house opposed to away from the house?
It was much cooler under the house. I was really warm walking around in my painter's overalls or whatever they're called, and but as soon as I got inside and under there, I actually wasn't. It wasn't warm, so that was nice. That was the only nice part of that at all.
Okay. And Dandy, is there any chance you'd go to Oklahoma where Jesse McFadden lived?
There's a lot of different possibilities, and we just don't know all the answers yet.
Okay. And Honeybee, are you thinking no animal activity because of chemicals?
I'm thinking there was little like animal activity because it was just closed off really well, but I don't know how much you want to say about that one area, but Larry noticed something around. How much am I supposed to say about this?
There's just certain things that were found that was absolutely needs to be further pursued, and some of the stuff that we recovered absolutely will have to be done by labs, and as we proceed, now that's what we'll do. We'll turn whatever bones and other items we found, because right now everything that's been classified has been for animals, but there's still more that has been found and discovered, and we'll see where it goes.
And from Ruckus at Carolyn, are you willing to come to Florida if needed?
I'm willing to go anywhere I'm needed. And Florida sounds fantastic.
Yeah, Ruckus,
Is he jealous?
yeah, he's jealous. Yeah, Ruckus is another channel. He's prior law enforcement, and absolutely will have a bright future and working cold cases also. So there's you another contact.
Yay! And that's Florida. I mean, yeah, okay. If anybody needs anybody to do any research in like the Bahamas or
Okay.
All right, and another blue light. Miranda donated 5 memberships.
Thank you. Appreciate
That's
that.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, and let's see here. And Miranda, do you feel like you won't be satisfied until that entire yard is searched? Because I feel that way. I didn't realize the yard was so large and dense, overgrown.
Well, that's why we spent some of the second day going through. We took out a lot of the weeds just because I wanted to see if there was any other depressions or anywhere else that just from the surface looked like it needed to be done. And I also wanted to clear as much as I could if we get the ground penetrating radar out. And so I feel like we did the ERI lines over the areas that we thought were most important, and that made me feel good. I'd love to do the rest of the yard, but if we get the GPR guys in, then they'll be able to do a quick run over my lines and in other places in the yard. And I really feel like, I mean, I'm not going to be satisfied until the entire yard is searched, but let's wait until we see what happens with the other stuff we still have going.
Absolutely.
CJK just reminding us about the snakes and gators in Florida.
I don't mind snakes and gators. Spiders, what gets me.
I'll kill your spiders, baby.
You will.
If it has to be done, I'll do it, but I'll complain the entire time.
Forensic VH, do you have volunteer forensic and all those long words ready to excavate?
If any of this comes back positive, law enforcement will bring those in.
Perfect.
Appreciate it. If you
I don't have to-
absolutely though, if you have interest in that and you have knowledge of that, absolutely send me an email, and I appreciate the contact.
And myth, is this the same technology that has been used to find indigenous children in Canada and US?
Yeah, I think that was the ground penetrating radar that they used, but it could have been either my kind of equipment or the ground penetrating radar could have been used to see the disturbances and also the reflectors of those burials. But yeah, I think it was the ground penetrating radar.
Okay. And question for Ms. Carolyn, is AI, artificial intelligence, emerging as a tool in interpreting data findings in your work? Thanks. Fabulous presentation.
Oh gosh. I've had long discussions with people about how exactly to define artificial intelligence right now. Let me not get into the long-winded discussion about this. I've written my own Python scripts in order to for my ERI and for other data acquisition techniques like ground penetrating radar. I can make my own scripts in order to look at some of the data differently or to do different processing. And so I'm not sure if using tools like that or using other softwares, they're always progressing in that kind of to get anything from anybody else anytime soon for interpretation.
Okay. And from Cynthia, when are you returning to the site?
We've got a lot going on. I've got another case that we're going to be going up on in late June, early July. It depends a lot about what is how soon we get the soil process and the results, and then that will determine how we move forward.
And Rocky Mountain boring. How big of an area can you do at a time? Carolyn?
Hello, Carolyn.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, with you can space your electrodes differently in order to see deeper into the ground. The shortest survey, you can space them 1 meter apart, so I can do 23 meters long of a survey. And if I don't have to see that deep, you can run them about, if you have a really nice yard, you can run a survey in about 30 minutes if you don't have to go through a whole bunch of fences and weeds and other things. But we took a day to do the 3 lines that you see there, because we did have weeds we had to take down, and those 2 of them were 23 meters long and the other one was 20 meters long, and I ran the entire depth that needed to be done, or that could be done.
All right.
But
And Dave, is there any granite down there?
I didn't see any bedrock in my, it's all really conductive. And then that last row, if there's a high resistivity in like the deepest part, that kind of doesn't get resolved so well. So I don't believe that we got anywhere near the bedrock, at least in my data, but I'm not sure what actually bedrock is here.
And Rippy, do you have an Amazon wish list for equipment?
Oh, yes. Well, the foundation just recently purchased a lot of equipment for this case, and also the next case that Chris is going out on next week. And but no, there's a lot of equipment that I wish we had, and some of it's rather expensive, as Carolyn has explained to me.
Here's
And
a Carolyn equipment wish list.
yes,
It's bad.
and
Bad news.
but as the foundation grows and as we go out and work more and more cold cases, we'll continue to expand our equipment, and I'm looking forward to those days. And so that regardless of how or when a family with any type of case, that we'll be able to go out and see if we can't locate their loved ones.
All right. A couple people have asked about Carolyn's channel. I have pinned it to the top of chat. So scroll up there.
I put it up just for you guys.
If it's not there, let me know. Molly, sneak a peek for me. All right. And this is a good one, Carolyn.
Uh-oh.
This is from Monique. How did Carolyn become interested in geophysics? It's obvious she's very passionate.
Yeah, so I got into the near surface because I wanted to do something around Wisconsin. And then I realized that all the projects that they were asking me to do, people really needed my help. Like the farmers that I was working with, they were losing a lot of money to permits and things like that they shouldn't have been in some cases. And like they were just having a hard time with that. And I could really help them out by telling them information about their yards to be able to tell other agencies. And so that was, and then like hazards, like I went out to this one farm because a woman was pushing her kid on a swing and she fell through the ground. She fell 6 feet into an old cistern. And so just checking her yard to see, because they didn't even know it was an old cistern at the time. And so they thought they had a sinkhole. And it was just, I realized that I was helping people. I was making people feel safe and feel like respected by doing my work. And so that's why like the near surface stuff just stuck with me. And then when I can help with cases like that, it just makes me feel even better about what I'm doing.
Absolutely. It's amazing the work you do. Absolutely.
All right. And from Mitzi, was there an old fireplace or wood stove previously on the property?
I don't believe so. That the type of home it was and when it was put in there in the early 80s, I didn't see either one of those.
And from Sharon, I wonder if Larry has anything of Amber's from when she was 2 or under that might have her DNA, like a lock of hair, for instance.
I will ask that question Saturday. Hopefully Larry will be able to come on and do an interview Saturday evening with us. So we'll address that then.
And Lee, with the weather being extra cold there at that time, are you thinking the guy just placed Amber under the house? I'm trying to picture how and what he could use to dig under the house.
Well, let me ask Carolyn, who was under the house, that that earth that was disturbed. What did it appear that it was dug, or what's your impression of it?
Well, I mean, I don't know exactly how much I should say, but there was a depression, and other. I mean, it's true. You couldn't have dug if it was so cold outside. I'll tell you that, and that would all hold to the scenario that I saw under the house. Couldn't dig too far.
Yeah, the depression under the house, and that's one of the things that drove us to look under the house, is due to that the weather conditions outside were not conducive to anyone digging outside, and you would need to dig in some type of sheltered area, such as a crawl space, and that's one of the things that led us to that area.
Yeah, that entire area, a scenario of it being cold and in the winter, if you start to make assumptions about why that depression and stuff is there, it is believable that it could happen in that weather condition.
All right, and blue light for Miranda. I know I ask a lot of questions, so I appreciate Mr. and Mrs. Steve answering all of them.
Absolutely, we appreciate the questions, because we may or may not cover everything or get all the points out unless those questions are asked and answered.
All right, and Mike D. at Carolyn. As an electrician, I wonder what voltage you are generating as you do these surveys.
I can send up to, at the most, 200 volts into the ground. My box can do that. And so it won't always, but it will. And I guess there's also, I've just discovered a way I could send more. I don't really need to do that. I also don't.
You warned us to stay away at certain times.
Yes, do not touch the electrodes. I mean, it's more like a game of chance, or I don't know, a different version of like a Russian roulette. Like if it's one of the 4 electrodes that are working at that moment that you touch out of the 24, then you'll get a zap.
All right. And then Gail asked, Carolyn, what were your injuries?
From under the house? Or because, I mean, there were bugs, and I did not know. I think I knew about the issue with old insulation, but I kind of forgot about it. And so my skin is still weeping the prickly insulation on my wrist and my knee and my ankle, because I didn't cover up as well as I should have that first day I went under. And so that's my biggest injuries, and my bruises all along my front and side.
Yeah, y'all worked hard.
All right. And blue light for Jennifer Rochelle, member for 7 months.
Thank you
so much.
Appreciate it.
All right. And then let's see here what I got. I just got to finish up.
I see one from Lobo about speaking. Go ahead.
It's there.
Okay. Isn't the mother still around DNA? Yes, plus Larry is. So we had, I know with the DNA profiles, they're able to do that. So we had a biological father, and then of course the mother, that would be someone that we could get DNA from if we have to.
This is priceless. And Anna Lizette wants to know, so that equipment could zap gophers? That sounds hopeful.
Oh, evidently someone has a gopher problem.
Yeah, so the main concern that people have had in the past is their cows. when I lived in Wisconsin, for sure. It's not going to hurt your cows. And I know I've made ants very angry. And when I test my equipment, I don't go into the backyard where I know my chipmunk Chunks lives because I don't want to hurt him. And so, yeah, I mean, but I don't know exactly what would happen. I assume it wouldn't be good, but if you have a gopher that you need it tested on, I am interested in learning.
Absolutely. All right.
You're done.
Well, we've got all our questions done. And absolutely, I was so honored to work with you, and I appreciate you coming on here tonight. Is there anything that you would like to finish up and say?
Just, I mean, thanks for letting me have the opportunity to show you and everybody else my equipment because it is really underused. And it's like in the whole scheme of things for like a city or a company, it's actually not that expensive and it's not that hard to teach a technician how to use it. So I think it should be implemented in more places. And so the more I can talk about it and the more I can show other people how to use it, I think is good. And also thank you for letting me go and try to help out on this case because like that means a lot to me that somebody's put their trust in me to help them on such an important
You'll always have my respect, and I look forward to working with you again in the future on this case plus others. And there's a lot of them out there. And as we move forward, I look forward to that. But absolutely, it was an honor, and thank you for being here tonight. And I want to thank everybody that contributed tonight. We appreciate it. We want to also thank all our mods. They do so much for this channel, and we greatly appreciate it. Thank you. But anyway, Carolyn, I'm going to put you backstage, and we'll get with you in just a few minutes.
Okay.
All right, guys. Like I said, we appreciate everyone being here. I have another one of the team members we're going to try to get up here on Thursday night. And then tomorrow I'll have my members show for, I'll probably do all the members again tomorrow night because I've been gone for a week. And then I'll have my morning watch. And then Thursday we'll have another one of the search members on. And then Saturday I'm going to try to get Larry here. So y'all stay safe out there. Thank y'all, and looking forward to seeing y'all soon.
Love y'all. Thank you, mods.